Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of JD Talks NASCAR. On this episode, we recap the race at Gateway and look forward to the upcoming road course race at Sonoma. Um, you know, Gateway was I would say, ranking it category wise, I would say it was a decent race. I enjoy the racing at Gateway. I have the three times that they've went. Seems like there's always some pretty intense battles, and this time we saw it with Kyle Larson and Kyle Busch, their battle. But the first year it was Ross and Denny, and Ross and Chase. This year it was Larson and Busch. So um, I'm kind of glad they only go to Gateway once a year because I think it keeps it special. When NASCAR sometimes goes to tracks twice a year, it can you aren't as excited to see it the next time. But I think Gateway is a perfectly exceptional track. Like I think it's fine. I don't think it's overly. I don't think it puts on an overly good race. I don't think it puts on a bad race. I think it's like right in the middle. So, and then we go to Sonoma this coming week. So I know this episode is a little later than normal. I've been working a lot of hours. Um, so haven't really had time to sit down and record an episode. And I don't want to just give you all scraps. I want the episodes to be good and listenable and engaging. And so I think I do a very good job at that because I'm very picky of when I record. Because if I'm not feeling it, I don't put the effort in to do it. But I'm feeling good today. I I'm still ticked about picking Ryan Blaney in my fantasy league, and for once, my fantasy league looking up for me. I thought I was going to get my first win. And as you all know, if you watch the race, Ryan Blaney runs out of gas on the last lap or coming to the white and ruins his chance at a win. But hate it for Blaney, hate it for me. That you knew that was going to come up if you are in my fantasy group and you listen to this, which I know some of you do. And shout out to Dalton, who had Austin Cindric, um, who got the win. So I hated it for myself, but glad for him and glad for Austin Cindric. Cindric is a guy that was really really good in the Xfinity series, but just for whatever reason it hasn't transferred to Cup. Obviously, different car, but he was with Penske in Xfinity and is still with Penske. His father is a higher up at Penske, so he's a very good driver. But he he didn't just back into this win either. I'll be honest with you. He qualified well. He stayed up front all day, so it's not like he just backed into it. Granted, leaders had issues, and I'll get into that when I recap the race. But by no means was this a back into a win. I don't think I classify this as a legit win for Austin Cindric. So I know he said in his post race the 12 should have won, and I tend to agree with that statement, but that's not what happened. So congrats to Cindric and the two team. But let's get into it. First of all, a beautiful day. A beautiful day in St. Louis. I would love to go to Gateway. I think it would be a really cool place to watch a race because you can see the arch from Gateway. I saw a picture. I think NASCAR posted it on Twitter where you can see the arch in the background with the sunset and while cars are on track. So it would definitely be an awesome place to watch a race. I love St. Louis in general, just being there. Um, you know, touring the city, seeing how big the arch is truly in real life. So I could definitely get behind going to a race at Gateway for sure in the future. But we start out. Derek Kraus was in the Colleague 16 this week, and Cody Ware was in the Rick Ware Racing 15. They get into each other early and bring out the first caution of the day. Um, you know, I, you know, I don't really have anything to say about this besides fun fact: Derek Kraus once got mad at me on iRacing. I don't know if he remembers it or not, but and I was definitely not in the wrong. But story time. It's story time. So anytime Derek Kraus gets brought up, I always say this. Um, it was probably about a year ago, maybe not quite a year ago. I think it was. It might have been in like the off season of NASCAR, and I was racing Xfinity cars with him at Dover, and I had got in. His friend that was racing with us had got into me and ended my race. I mean, it didn't really end it. I was still on track, but I was damaged up pretty well, and his friend blamed it on me, said it was my fault, whatever. And at this point, Derek was leading the race. It was Xfinity at Dover, and I'm not competitive because his friend got into me. My car is tore up, and I'm a lap car, so Derek goes to pass me. He gets by fine. A couple other cars I let him by, and I say to his friend who wrecked me earlier, he's like, "I'm about to pass." He comes over the driver's chat, and it's like, "I'm about to pass you." Just letting you know. I said, "All right, that's fine. I'm not going to ruin your race." I mean, I was not competitive. He was still running well because he didn't hardly have any damage. And so I said, "Okay, I'm not going to ruin your race. I'll get up out of your way." And right where he caught me in the track at Dover, it was off 3 and 4, and I was hugging the wall. I mean, hugging it. And instead of staying down low in his lane, he kind of drifts up, which is easy to do at Dover, I'll grant, but drifts up into me, ends up spinning out, and then they all blame it on me. So, luckily the other people in the lobby had my back and said there was nothing I could do. But there's a little story for you about him. Now back to the race recap. I'm not saying that as a bad thing. I'm not trashing anybody, but it's always cool to bring up stories. When you race with people, like I made a friendship with Daniel Dye. Still text him to this day on iRacing, and he's a good up and comer that he continues to run well in the truck series. I've raced with Dale Earnhardt Jr. on there, believe it or not. Xfinity at Atlanta a couple months back. I raced with Dale Jr. I think I said that on here, but it was so cool to hear him talk. I mean, he's talking to you like he's in a regular race. So very cool stuff. He's a big iRacing advocate anyway. But I know my mom. If you're listening, Mom, I know that when I told you that and showed you that I was racing with him, that you got really happy and excited because my mom's a lifelong Dale Jr. fan. So she's always excited. She likes hearing me tell that story. Now, back into the race recap. My pick to win this week was Martin Truex Jr. And he looked good early. He looked good early until his flat tire proved to be very bad for him. Ends up finishing like 3 laps down and 34th. Had a big part in the race later on, but just never could bounce back after that flat. And he got trapped a couple laps down. Was never able to work his way back up. And then Josh Berry flat tire into the fence hard, into the 4 cars day very early. And hate to see that for Josh. He's been getting better and better. He's been running better and better. And obviously with the news of SHR, which I'm going to get into after the race recap, you really start to wonder if you are a fan of that organization, or if you're like me and just watch from a distance, you've got to wonder, once they start losing employees to other racing teams, are they going to be as competitive as they are? And does that happen, or do the Stewart Haas people, do they stay until the end of the season? I'm not sure how that'll all work. But that'll be definitely something to keep our eye on as the season goes on. Christopher Bell seemed like he had the dominant car for stage 1 and stage 2. Looked like he was honestly going to walk his way to a victory, but that did not happen. He did win both of the stages, got good stage points for the day, and the 20 car once again looks really dominant, but they don't get the finish they deserve, which is really strange to me because they have so much speed, especially on these flat tracks. Phoenix last year, Gateway, Phoenix this year. I think he won Phoenix this year. So they continue to get better on these kind of tracks, but he had the issue And I'll just get into it at the end of the race recap. But if you watch the race, you already know. But Seabell, a rough day or a rough end to his dominant looking day early. And then we get into Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson. This was an interesting thing to say the least. Like I'm not sure. Um, it looked like Larson got to the inside of him and side drafted him really hard to pass him. Maybe hit Kyle's left front when he side drafted him. But if you're Kyle Busch in this situation, you haven't ran good all year long. You're coming off the fight with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Um, you know, why take that risk and pinch him so hard into one that he gets loose under you and ends up ruining your day? I don't get the mindset. I know it was heat of the battle right in that moment, but how did that happen? If you're Kyle Busch in that situation, I just don't. I don't know. Kyle Busch, he's seemed off this year. He's obviously off on speed, but just with the whole Ricky thing and now Kyle Larson, he just lost his temper a lot. Like I don't know, like he's got a shorter fuse. I know he had a short fuse back in the day when he first started, but lately that hasn't been the case. That I think. I mean, over the radio he will have a short fuse, but not on the racetrack. So that's kind of strange to see, to be honest with you. But we'll see what happens. I'm sure he is frustrated at running the way he's running, but he had a good day going. That's why I don't get it. He had a ton to lose. Larson didn't really have anything to lose. So I don't think Larson even intentionally got into Kyle. I think he was just trying to side draft him pretty hard to pass him. And, you know, ends with Larson getting loose under him. And like I said, ends Kyle Busch's day. So not a good situation for the 8 team. And then we get to where it gets super interesting. Christopher Bell and Ryan Blaney had a heck of a battle going. I mean, it lasted for 10 to 15 laps, side by side racing. It was Blaney on the high line, Seabell on the bottom, and they battled each other for several laps. It was really entertaining to watch. I was hoping that it was going to go all the way down to the end with those two battling it out because I felt like they were the most deserving of the win. But I wanted to shout out those two guys for having a clean, good battle. Um, you know, Sometimes you see it in NASCAR, sometimes you don't. But Seabell and Blaney did that at Gateway on Sunday. So shout out to them. The battle they had leads to Christopher Bell overheating. And this is what I was talking about, the troubles he had. He looked dominant. He was marching his way back through the field. He was battling Blaney for the lead and, says he's blowing up. And, I was like, oh man, we're not going to have a battle to the finish. But hey, that leaves Blaney. Blaney's going to win this thing. Like I'm set. I'm good with that. Like I'm glad Seabell can get a good finish because he's not all the way blew up. But hey, this is going to help me in fantasy. Blaney's going to get the win. That'll at least make my Martin Truex Jr. pick feel a little bit better. But as you all know, that did not happen. So Martin Truex Jr. helped Christopher Bell when he caught up to him. Martin was 3 or 4 laps down, and he would push Christopher Bell in the straightaways. And Seabell ends up still bringing home a top 10, even with a almost blown engine. So that was huge for that team to at least salvage that. Ryan Blaney wasn't as lucky as he runs out of gas coming to the white flag and ends up finishing from the lead in 1 lap. He goes from the lead to 24th, and that's where he finishes. Luckily, he was able to get points during the stages to help balance out what was otherwise a crappy ending to the race. I know it had to sting for him. They haven't ran the way that the 12 team is used to running. Some of that has to do with raw speed. Some of it has to do with their pit road issues. They've had, Coke Sticks under didn't get a wheel tight, and he ends up smacking the fence, and his day's done. Just been stuff like that. And, I'm sure Blaney definitely wanted to end up in victory lane, but I think that's coming. I think he'll at least win 1, maybe 2 races this season because the Ford continues to improve as a whole. And I think the 12 team, you're not going to keep them down for very long. So And then, like I said at the beginning, due to Blaney running out of gas and Christopher Bell overheating, Austin Cindric wins at Gateway. And I didn't mean to phrase that like, just because those things happen, but because I think, like I said, I think Cindric had pace all weekend, to be honest with you. Practice, qualifying, and the race. He kept himself up there. He was running third when the leaders had their issues, so more power to him. Congrats on the win to the two team, and now in the playoffs. So what can he do? What can he do in the playoffs? Let's see. Um, you know, obviously Penske's good at Phoenix. If he could get to the Final Four, I mean, there's always that chance. But obviously that's a long time away. You got to run good. He hasn't ran well at all this season up until this race. So definitely got to show improvement in speed in that 2 car if you're going to try to make it to Phoenix. But like I said, congrats to Austin Cindric. And now that's the race recap. So let's get into a little news tidbits of the week. First of all, Stuart Haas Racing announces they are closing their doors. Um, I think I've talked about this a little bit the last 2 weeks, but I'm going to just say real quick, not shocking, not a shocking move by any means. I think that this was expected from the people I talked to. This has been, uh, you know, coming for since the beginning of the season. I felt like people around SHR knew that they were done after this season, but Tony and Gene wanted to gather everyone and make the announcement last week. So it sucks, to be honest with you. I'm used to seeing SHR in the Cup Series. They've won championships. They've won several races, and I hate it for the people of SHR in the garage and everywhere. But they'll find places to go. I mean, there's no doubt. Rodney Childers is a guy that comes to my mind. Just an exceptional crew chief. What is he going to do? Is another team going to hire him? I would definitely think so. I think he would do great elsewhere. Does he follow Josh Berry wherever he goes? Can Josh Berry keep Cup sponsorship to go somewhere else? What about Noah Gregson? He has done a great job this season. Where does he go from here? Chase Briscoe has been big time rumored to take over the 21 seat of Harrison Burton at the end of the year. I think that'll definitely happen. Just speaking on what I have heard and saw, I think Briscoe that's where he'll be heading, but nothing official yet. But my main thing, I don't necessarily know if Ryan Priest will get a Cup ride next year. I do think Gregson and Barry are in good shape if Barry can, keep the sponsorship. And Gregson's a big Bass Pro guy. Could Martin Truex Jr. retire and him end up at Gibbs? Wouldn't that be something? Noah Gregson and Ty Gibbs on the same team, I would be all for it. Because I actually like both of them. I know they had a huge rivalry in the Xfinity series, but I'm a big fan of both of those guys. So, put Noah in top tier equipment, that guy's going to win you races. That's just a fact. He's outperforming his equipment right now, in my opinion. I think he's done very good things for the 10 car. And so we'll see. All those are questions that'll be answered in the future. Silly season is ramping up. I think this will be the wildest one in a while. I mean, there's so many different moving parts. The charters, where are they going to get sold to? That's another thing. I broke that down a little bit last week. But first, they've got to come, NASCAR and the owners have got to come to a charter agreement. That's the first thing. In order for some people, like Denny. He said on his podcast this week, I heard him say that, he's not buying anything until they get a charter agreement done. So that needs to hurry up for all parties. They need to agree on something and to get this thing going. So, hated to see it for Tony Stewart. Him being away from NASCAR will suck. He hasn't been he hasn't been around that much the last couple of years, but he is definitely a guy that when he is around, he's going to produce content. He was in the booth a couple times last year, I remember, for Fox. So will he be doing that anymore? I'm not sure. He hasn't done it yet this year, but he's definitely a good voice in the booth. And just a legacy. They leave behind a legacy. They, like I said, they've won titles. They've won several races. So it'll definitely be different. Not seeing the 4 SHR cars at the track next season. And then we get into what I'm sure everybody is wanting me to talk about, and I hadn't talked about it last week or the week before. I knew it had popped up in NASCAR circles, but the reason I didn't discuss it is because I didn't feel like there was any reason to. I didn't think that it was even a remote possibility that Kyle Larson wouldn't get his playoff waiver. But my goodness, was it? And I found out, shortly after I recorded my episode last week, hey, there is a possibility that NASCAR does not grant this waiver. And then it picked up steam online over the weekend. Um, and I was, as a Kyle Larson, I mean, people think it's strange that I like Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson both. You all don't realize. I mean, maybe you do, but those guys are friends off the racetrack. They compete, but there's not a natural hatred there that I'm aware of. But clearly, I'm going to pick Denny over Larson anytime. But at the same time, I like Larson. Even if you don't like Larson, he deserved a playoff waiver. NASCAR ultimately makes the decision to grant him one. This was yesterday morning. I was relieved for Kyle Larson fans, for the NASCAR community as a whole, because um, you know, it made no sense to me why you wouldn't grant it. You granted one. I mean, you've granted one to everybody. You granted one to Chase Elliott last year, who got himself suspended for a race, who he got hurt, which that's different. I think you should grant waivers for injuries, but he got himself suspended last year, and you granted him a waiver. And I think that's kind of where NASCAR's dug themselves a hole. How would you have justified that? If it came down to it, how could you justify saying you give Chase a waiver but couldn't give one to Larson when he was trying his best to get to Charlotte as quick as he could? So, and then the argument to that, and I've heard this also, is Larson chose IndyCar over Charlotte, or over the Coke 600. It's hard to argue that point, because all week long he said, NASCAR, Coke 600 is the main priority. But then when it came down to it, the weather delayed the Indy 500 a little bit, a couple hours, and but you know, so you can make that argument, I guess, to the contrary. But I'm on the side where I think 99% of the NASCAR community was on the side of he should get a waiver. Um, Even the drivers speaking out, I think, really helped too. Saying that he should get a waiver. He's doing better for the sport. He's bringing all this attention to NASCAR, and he will continue to. IndyCar fans are going to watch him because he put on a heck of a performance. Until he sped, but even after that, he led some laps due to strategy. But IndyCar fans really fell in love with the idea of Larson running the double, and as a NASCAR community, I enjoyed it. I never watch IndyCar, but I wanted to watch him attempt this. I made it a point to watch it. So I think it was a nightmare scenario waiting to happen if they did not grant this waiver. They did end up doing it, which is uh, a huge like breath of fresh air and a good thing. So I'm glad they did that. Larson now sits it in second in the points. He has his 17 playoff points back, and he will be ready to go in the 2024 NASCAR playoffs. So let me know what you all think. This was a hot topic end of last week, beginning of this week, until they announced the news that he was getting the waiver. But let me know what you all think. Does Kyle Larson deserve a waiver for the playoffs? In my opinion, it's 100% yes. And NASCAR made the right decision here by ultimately doing it. But I will say, there was a point in time where I thought, they might not grant this thing. They really might. I mean, there was real possibility that they weren't going to, and ultimately, I think they made the right decision in doing it, and it's definitely a relief for all the Kyle Larson fans out there. Um, those were the two main news points, but a little bit of fun things. Denny Hamlin brought back his Dirty Mo Bracket Challenge. It started this week at Gateway. There was a huge upset. Austin Dillon, number 31 seed, knocked out Martin Truex Jr., who was the 2 seed. That was the biggest upset. and that was a huge one. I ultimately have Denny Hamlin winning the bracket challenge. I picked William Byron last year. He went on to win it. And then next year we get to do it for real. Like they'll be when they are commentating, they'll break down the matchups during the races. It'll be broadcast live on TV. So this is like the first year of just doing it online and us paying attention to it. Next year, the commentators, everybody will be breaking it down. So that'll be awesome to see. And then, of course, the winner will get $1,000,000. So let me know who you all have. If you all filled out a bracket on Dirty Mo and who you all have winning it. I think my final was like, it might have been Denny and Larson or Denny and Byron. Um, I know Tyler Reddick and Denny both were in my final four. And it might have been like Chase and Larson or something. I don't remember. But ultimately, I had Denny winning it. And I think he will. He's been the fastest. Sonoma coming up this week kind of scares me on a road course, but I mean, let's be honest. Second place, and he wasn't a factor all day long. Still finished second. So, I mean, the 11 team's just on an insane heater right now. Some notable finishers, and then we'll get into the quick Sonoma breakdown. I want to thank you all. For last week's episode, it's probably because of the Coke 600 and the indie drama, but listenership was up compared to the last couple episodes. So I really thank you all for that. That means the world to me to see that. So, keep listening, keep enjoying it. Hopefully that's the goal. So, hopefully you all will continue to listen and enjoy it. Some notable finishers, obviously Austin Cindric winning it in first, Denny second. Brad Keselowski continues to run great. A third place finish, another top three. Tyler Reddick fourth. Joey Logano with a big top five run. And Austin Dillon, who really needed a good run. They've struggled all year, just like Kyle Busch. He brings it home sixth. Seabelt was able to bring it home seventh without, while blowing up. So shout out to Martin Truex Jr. for helping him do that. And two guys that I want to shout out that are every week outperforming their equipment that they are in. And that's Carson Hocevar and Justin Haley. Both of those guys are willing their cars every single week. Carson finished 8th, Justin Haley 9th. Both of those guys are doing great jobs. They're outperforming at least what I expected of them. I think of what the NASCAR community expected. That 77 car was a last place car almost every race last year. And Carson has took it. I think this was his second top 10, maybe third. But he continues to do good things. He's staying out of trouble, which was the one thing that I was worried about with him coming into Cup. He's stayed out of the nonsense. He's doing great things for the Spire team. So shout out to him and Justin Haley in the same respect, which he was never a troublemaker anyway. He's one of the most chill drivers in the field. It seems like he always has been. But in the Rick Ware cars, he seems like he's in the top 10. You look up at the pylon or scoring monitor, and at some point during a race, he's top 10, top 15. And this week, he was able to finish in 9th. So great job for him. Notable bad finishes. Alex Bowman, 28th, was a shocker for me. I felt like the 48, they've ran solid all year long, but at Gateway, just wasn't in the cards for some reason. They finished 28th. Martin Truex Jr., of course, with, like I said, the flat tire really impacted him. 34th, Kyle Busch 35th due to the accident with Larson, and Josh Berry last due to his accident early in the race due to a flat tire. Now, we move on to Sonoma. And before I do, I want to say, I know this was 2 weeks ago, but last week I didn't mention I correctly picked the winner of the Charlotte Xfinity race, Chase Elliott. So my predictions aren't complete crap. They were this weekend. Martin Truex Jr. didn't pan out, but hopefully we get back at it this week. We go to our second straight road course in the Xfinity series as they went to Portland on last Saturday, and SVG got his first career Xfinity win. That was huge. Anytime we go to a road course now, SVG seems like he's going to be the man to beat in the Xfinity series. However, my Xfinity pick, Sam Mayer, got the pole, and then just the very first corner of the race, got spun out, and he never could recover. Ended up finishing 28th. So if you followed my picks this week, sorry about that. But hopefully it gets better this week. And now, Sonoma and Xfinity, can SVG make it 2 in a row? That would be a sight to see, without a doubt. And it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, he was dominant for the most part at Portland. So heck, why not pick the guy again at Sonoma? Is that too cliche? I'm sure he'll be the favorite. I didn't realize how big of a favorite he was at Portland until they qualified, and I was like, holy cow, he's going to put this thing. He can put this thing in victory lane. Did it pretty easily, to be honest with you, at Portland. So yeah, give me SVG in the Xfinity series at Sonoma. As far as the Cup race goes, I've struggled with this all week deciding who to pick. I lean Tyler Reddick, but it seems like he struggles here. To be honest with you, he's not as quick on this road course as he is any other. I'll say that, and he'll blister the field by a second and a half, all race long. But I kind of want to steer away from him, and I'm gonna go with the 24 car of William Byron. He was dominant at Watkins Glen last year. I don't think he's won Sonoma. I could be wrong on that, but I don't think he has. They've been off on speed the last couple weeks, which has been weird because at the beginning of the year they were one of the fastest every week. But give me William Byron. Would not shock me if Larson or Chase, either one, also could win. But I'm heavy on Hendrick this week. I like Hendrick at Sonoma, and we'll see. But I look for them to be strong. What are your predictions? Who do you think's going to win this thing? Would it shock me if Tyler Reddick shows up and whips the field? Absolutely not. But I just think he's not on at Sonoma like he is at these other road courses. So we'll see what happens. I think Michael McDowell will be a factor as well. He tends to run well here at Sonoma. So could he go back to victory lane like he did at Indy Road Course last year? We will see. And you talk about switching up the playoffs again. Michael McDowell winning would definitely do that for sure. So we'll see. The playoff bubble's getting interesting, folks. This whole Logano not making the playoffs thing, I'm telling you, if I called that at the beginning of the year, you all will never hear me shut up about that because that's going to be a generational call. I still don't think that, obviously I thought it could happen at the beginning of the year. I was 100% serious. Like they didn't show the speed last year that I thought, would carry over to anything this year, and they haven't. He ran good at Gateway, but all Fords did. So what will he do at Sonoma? We'll see. I think he's currently like 14 points out right now, which isn't massive. He could definitely make that up. But, if they keep running mid-pack, it's going to be hard. So we'll see. Thank you all for listening. I can't thank you enough. It continues to be awesome to have a podcast about NASCAR. I love NASCAR. You all know this. So I know if you all are listening to this, you do as well. So next week we'll recap Sonoma and see what happens, and then we're on to Iowa for the first time in the Cup Series. I don't know if it's the first time ever, but it's definitely I think it might be the first time ever in the Cup Series. They run Xfinity and trucks there quite a bit, but I think it's the first time in the Cup Series. So I can't wait to see that. Another short track added to the Cup schedule. I'm more pumped about that race than I am Sonoma, to be honest with you, just because road courses tend, especially in this next gen car, to get drug out. The field get spread out. But we'll see. I'm not crapping on it right now until we see what happens. So we'll see. And like I said, I'm looking forward to Iowa. So we'll get back here, look forward and preview Iowa and recap Sonoma. And if anything else interesting happens during the week, you will hear about it right here on JD Talks NASCAR. Thank you all for listening. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and as well on YouTube. And I can't thank you all enough. You are the best. This has been JD Talks NASCAR.